What's going on, y'all? This is your boy Ollie Footy back with another one. We got some UCL knockout playoff predictions, and I'm gonna kind of go through this in different order. I'm basically going from smallest or the ones I care the least about to the ones I care the most about. Obviously, we as fans all have bias, so please forgive me if I didn't put your club last because I don't care about them as much. But I love football. I love watching football. I still care. Anywho, you guys will see the order. But yeah, just if you're wondering, like, why is he doing that matchup first? That's why. Okay, so let's start with the most inconsequential one to me, and this is Olympiacos and Leverkusen. And for me, inconsequential because I think both of these teams will probably get knocked out in the next round anyway. But look, with Olympiacos and Leverkusen, this is actually funny because they just faced off, and Olympiacos won 2-0, I think, on match day 7. And 2-0 is a comfortable score. I didn't see the game, so I don't know how comfortable it was, but you'd imagine, playing in Greece is obviously really hard. We saw with Madrid. Not that Madrid's an elite team, but they're a competent team. You'd say they're on Leverkusen level at least. So you can't imagine Leverkusen can go in there and have an easy time in a UCL knockout game. So yeah, I'm feeling Olympiacos 2-0 again, actually. It's gonna go 2-1. Give Leverkusen a little credit, but it's tough to play in Greece, man. That atmosphere is incredible. It's intense. And now with round of 16 spot on the line, yeah, I'm feeling Olympiacos 2-0. Man, Leverkusen are gonna have one heck of a task going back at the Bayer Arena to try and reverse that lead, but that's what I'm feeling. Olympiacos to win that game. Next up, we have Qarabag versus Newcastle United. Now, this one is an interesting matchup because I think the talent gap between the two teams is probably pretty wide, but the fact that Newcastle have to travel all the way, like however many hours, 9, 10 hours or so to get to Azerbaijan, that might be overdoing it. Maybe not 9 or 10 hours, but it's still a long trip. Surely at least 6 hours to get to Azerbaijan, right? And Newcastle, I think, just went to Villa, and Newcastle are all the way up north in England, like they're the farthest team up there, right? I think so. It's already a lot of travel for them, so I'm sure that plays a part. I think fatigue and travel and jet lag and all this stuff. I think that plays a role more than most people like to think. Um, with that being said, Qarabag also a tough place to play. All right, Qarabag drew with Chelsea a few years ago. Actually, I remember Qarabag almost beating Leverkusen back when they were never losing, and then they went invincible and they reached Europa League final. They played Qarabag in the Europa League. I think it ended up being a draw or a Leverkusen win at like the 97th minute in stoppage time. It was incredible, incredible game. But I say that to say that's when Qarabag I think got put on a lot of people's radar, and they've got some sauce. With Qarabag, like they've got something to them. They're a tough team to play. Obviously, again we saw it with Chelsea, and yeah, I think Newcastle are gonna have a tough time there. But I think the difference is between Newcastle and Chelsea is I think Newcastle much more physical team in terms of they like the ball in the air. They'll rely more on set pieces and long throws and karambol, as I like to call it. Like that stuff is not football to me, but it's part of the game. I get it, and I think Newcastle will abuse that, especially in Europe. A lot of the Premier League teams would do that. So I think Newcastle should be leaving with a 1-0. I think. Again, it's tough to play in Baku in Azerbaijan. I think Karabakh will be fearless and really go for it. So maybe they could eke out a draw here, but I think Newcastle too physical, even without Bruno G. I think Joe Linton's also injured, but like you still got guys like Alanga, and you still got guys like Harvey Barnes, Anthony Gordon, Voltamata, even if he's not in great form. Like who's guarding that? You know what I mean? Who's guarding Voltamata right now? So I think with all of that, give me Newcastle to win 1-0 over Qarabag and escape and go back to St. James with the lead. Now, next up, let's go and do Dortmund Atalanta. Now, this one, even though it's a little bit overlooked, I think it's probably one of the more, if not the most, actually, the most evenly matched tie, because both of these teams are, I think the same. kind of like they got the same sort of skill level. Now this matchup is interesting because Dortmund have a few injuries at the back. Sula's out and Schlotterbeck is out and Emre Can, I believe, is out. So, they're a little bit defensively weakened. On the other hand, Atalanta offensively weakened. So, actually good news for Dortmund, right? They sold Lookman. CDK is injured. And I think Raspadori is also injured. So, that kind of makes a recipe for a stalemate, right? But the one thing I didn't mention, and we all know how this works in European football, that home advantage, especially with Dortmund at the yellow wall, in the Signal Iduna Park. I think it's like 70,000 people, or like it's a lot of people. It might be more. It might be 80,000. Um, yeah, it's a tough place to play. You know, in Dortmund, Atalanta, I don't think have a chance there. I think it'll be 2-1 Dortmund win, maybe even a 2-0 because of the injuries Atalanta have. And, I think for Atalanta, I think the goal is to go in there and keep the score, feasible and manageable so that when you do go back to Italy, you have a chance to, reverse the situation and you don't have to be looking for too many goals. But yeah, I think Dortmund 2-0, maybe 2-1 here comfortably. Next, we have Bodo Glimt versus Inter. This one's really interesting because Bodo Glimt have been cooking some teams, like some big teams in Europe. Obviously, they went to Metropolitano and they won 3-1, I think it was. And it's like, man, you're looking at that scoreline, you're like, what? And then they beat City the week before, also 3-1, I believe. And it's like, what is going on in Norway, But credit to Bodo Glimt. Their manager has been there for a minute and he's been implementing some really innovative attacking football and it's carried them to European success. Obviously, last year, Europa League semi, where they got eliminated by Spurs, but it was a really great semi for them. And I think, they've been really opening eyes and making noise on the European level. And it's great to have that. I think, a team from Scandinavia, like, you don't expect that, right? Like, you think of the top teams from that area, and it's like Midtjylland, and outside of that, Copenhagen. After that, it's like, oh, I don't know. It's nice to have more competitive teams in the far north of Europe. I think, especially when you look at like the Scottish league has been, really declining in terms of competitiveness, or they just had a bad year at least. And the Irish teams don't do much, so yeah, it's nice to have some variety. That being said, let's get back to the game. Bodo Glimt and Inter. Inter at the end of the day, I think are going to be a little more defensively secure than both Atletico Madrid at home and City on the road. Um, you know, even with Lookman, they have another not Lookman. I'm sorry. Even with Lautaro Martinez and Marcus Thuram, it's going to be tough to guard those two. I think if you're Bodo Glimt, that two striker system, and I think Bodo Glimt play a four at the back, so it's like you're going center back v center back. Like it's like now, do you sit back if you're Bodo Glimt, but you're at home, you want to go and get some goals, so it's tough, I think. But Inter just have so many weapons. I think it's just gonna be too much for Bodo Glimt. It's been a great run. Maybe they could pull out a draw if we're lucky. It's tough to play in Norway. It's a weird environment. It's cold. It's not sunny Italy. It's not San Siro. It's a weird environment for players to get used to. So maybe they could pull a result out. By result, a 1-1, but I just don't see it, with all the weapons Inter have. I think I'm going to go with a 2-1 for Inter. Bodo Glimt could keep it close, maybe even a 1-0. And, who knows? Maybe they go to San Siro and pull off the impossible, but I think Inter's too powerful, and obviously Inter's in great form right now, coming off of the controversial win against Juve, but it's still a win. And Inter, I think 6 points clear now on top of the table in Italy, or 5 points clear. So they're in good spirits, good form. DeMarco's been insane, hat trick of assists the other day. Yeah, so I'm gonna go with Inter to win 1-0. All right, next up we have Club Brugge versus Atletico Madrid. Atletico Madrid don't know what they want to be, it seems like, or I guess they're throwing away La Liga. I think that's what Oblak said in a quote. They're throwing away the league. And that's what it looks like. They beat Betis 5-0 in the Copa del Rey and then lose to them in league. and then beat Barcelona Copa del Rey 4-0, and then you lose to Rayo Vallecano 3-0 in the league. Like this is what do you want to be, man? You know what I mean? What are you trying to be? Like choose. But I think it's pretty clear what we're looking at here. They're going hard in the knockout competitions. The league is settled in the fact that you're too far away. I think you're 13 or something points off of the top. You know, it's too far away to challenge for it. But you're good enough to know that you're not gonna lose your top four spot, so you're gonna have UCL. So it's like, all right, just go for it. Go for these trophies, go for these knockout competitions, and I respect that actually. So I think because of that, even though Club Brugge have a beautiful stadium and stuff to play in Belgium, we've seen that with Barcelona, seen that with Marseille, we've seen that I think with the Monaco, I think it was who got beat by them. And that Monaco game was rough. I think it was 4-1 or something like that. And then they have some great players. Ordonez in the back, who's I think Arsenal's in for him, or like a lot of big clubs are in for Ordonez. And then Carlos Forbes, like I can go on. Club Brugge is a very solid team, can give you trouble on any given day, especially at when they're at home. But I think Atletico Madrid with Lookman, new form of dynamism off the left, opens up spaces for Julian Alvarez and Sorloth, and it's just another weapon for a team like Bruges to have to worry about. I think it's just too much for Bruges to really go out of there with a win. I could see a draw, maybe a 2-2, but I think Atletico's super defensively solid still. At least Simeone will set them up that way in Europe, and I think they can get out of there with a 2-1. I'm feeling a 2-1 Atleti. Yeah, let's go with 2-1 Atleti. All right, what am I missing? I think I actually just did all of the Wednesday ones first. Funny enough. All right, let's talk about these last three here on Tuesday. So we have Galatasaray versus Juventus. Juventus. I'm crazy. Uh, Galatasaray versus Juventus. I love saying Galatasaray with the accent. But Gala, man, Osimhen, Cardi, you know, Yilmaz. They've got some players. Leroy Sané, right? You're looking at Juve, obviously coming off a controversial loss to Inter, but even then, a very bad loss to Atalanta in the Coppa Italia. So Juve's not been great recently. Spalletti's got some things to get in order, and I think in particular with Juve, and when it comes to European knockouts, it's the fact that they don't necessarily have a superstar up front. And I love Kenan Yildiz, but is he a superstar? Like, is he someone who can carry an attack on his own? No, I don't think so. Jonathan David hasn't necessarily exceeded expectations, which pains me because I loved him at Lille, and I love watching him with Canada, but he's just not been at the level yet that Juve need. And McKennie's been on fire, best form of his career, but same thing. It's not like McKennie walks into any team in Europe at the 10. It just works only for Juve. And when you go to like a Turkey and you gotta go and score on Galatasaray, can you do it? Maybe, because Galatasaray for me not defensively solid, right? It's not a center back pairing you trust. With all due respect to Davinson Sanchez and company, I don't trust them, to necessarily keep clean sheets in Europe. At the same time, the amount of weapons Galatasaray have offensively. I didn't even mention Gundogan, he can turn into right prime Zidane at any given moment, even at however old he is now. I think in Turkey it's going to be tough for Juve coming off a really inconsistent, coming off of inconsistent form. Galatasaray bossing it in Turkey, coming in good spirits. You're thinking, if you're a Galatasaray player, like Juve is like it's a winnable game, very winnable, very winnable. You're Victor Osimhen. You're like, okay, Bremer might be tough, but then it's like, all right, let me just pick on Lloyd Kelly over here. You know what I mean? And Lloyd Kelly hasn't been completely atrocious for Juve either, but it's I think you'd imagine Osimhen should be winning that battle. So I'm gonna go Galatasaray 2-1 over Juventus. They might need more if they want to win the tie, but I'm pretty confident they could win the match. It's gonna be tough to go to San Siro, and I think not to go in with a lead is going to be very bad for Galatasaray. So if they want any chance of winning the tie, they're going to have to win here in Turkey. If they can win big, even better. 3-4-1. Don't think that'll happen. I think Spalletti's smarter than that. He'll set his team up if it gets to that point to where you're not conceding any more goals. But Galatasaray have to go for it here. I think they know that. So I'm going to go Galatasaray 2-1 here. And next, we're going to do Benfica Real Madrid. Benfica, obviously, insane. Well, let's be real. Like this matchup has so many subplots because of just that insane match day 8 matchup between the two and goalkeeper goal in the however 90 whatever minute, and it's like, man, what crazy fate that these two are matched up again. But I think fairy tales like that only happen once in a blue moon. I think I'm not. I'm so sure that Madrid are gonna walk into Benfica into the Stadio da Luz. It's a tough place to play. A lot of teams don't win in Portugal against Benfica. It's tough to win there. But I think Real Madrid are gonna go in there and get theirs. They're gonna get their get back. All right. I'm feeling 2-0 Real Madrid. I think, it's tough because you as a Benfica player, right? With games like that, you put so much into it, right? You put so much emotional stock and so much, you know, soul. You put so much soul into the game, into getting that qualification. And then you have that emotional release. And it takes a while to recover from that. And I think this game just came up too quickly. And I think, if you're Jose Mourinho, it's hard to rally the troops to that level again. And I just don't see how they could do it again. This isn't to say Madrid is a drastically better team than they were a few weeks ago, but they will have Trent back, right? And Trent is revolutionary at the position. This guy can break a defense apart from right back. Like, it's something we haven't seen, right? It's ridiculous. That being said, not only Trent coming back, but I think Mbappe, who's had some injury issues, he'll be well rested hopefully. And the way Madrid act during UCL knockouts, they just turn it on. It's a DNA thing, right? So I think at least for this level of game, Madrid should be highly favored here. I'm gonna have Madrid going 2-0, maybe a 3-1 because Benfica are at home, but I just don't see Madrid, undergoing that fate again because I don't see how Benfica can muster it up. You know what I mean? It's just such a tall feat, such a tall task. I don't see it happening again. You know, it's if you're Jose Mourinho, it's like, do you go for it or do you park the bus? I don't know. It's tough, especially you're at home. You want to go for it. You want your fans behind you, but you got to play it smart. You can't expect your players to do that again. To score four and like to score four against Madrid is great, right? But then to try and do it again is just, it's like, how do you do that as if you're a Benfica level team? It's, I don't know. I think it's just too tall of a task. I don't see it. This is also one of the worst Benficas in years. Like, this is a far cry from the level they were at the last few seasons, and they're not doing. I think they're third in Portugal, so it's not great. I think that would put them in UCL qualifiers, I think, or maybe even Europa League. I'm not sure. Depends on the coefficient. But yeah, I just don't see it happening. Madrid with vengeance on their mind. Mbappe, Vinny, turned up. Give me Real Madrid 3-1. Sorry, Jose Mourinho. Sorry, AA9 skills. All right, let's keep it short and simple. This game is going to come down to whether PSG can not lose to themselves. You know what I mean? This is purely down to PSG converting their chances. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay? There's a stat that someone put on Twitter, where it's like PSG have lost, or they haven't won. They've only won once, actually, out of their last 6 trips to Monaco. Sorry, that took me a while to get out. But let's look at this lineup, okay? I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, how can we be afraid of this team? Like, if you're a Parisian. You can't be afraid of Monaco, man. Like, not that Parisians are, but I think it's like the gap in talent is so wide. Monaco have been such a poor team this season. They brought in Pogba, they brought in Fati, they brought in Eric Dyer, they brought in Simon Adingra, I think from Sunderland. Here he is right here. Like, they brought in so many transfers and have underperformed massively. Massively. You thought Pogba was gonna be Pog back by now. Pogba is still Pog bench. You know what I'm saying? Like, Monaco is not a great team right now. They're wallowing away in the middle of the table, trying to fight for Europa League. And you brought in all these people in the transfer window thinking you were gonna get UCL and you were gonna get to the round of 16 minimum of the UCL. It's been bad, right? So I say all that to say, if you're PSG, you're looking. If you're not even if you're PSG, but if you're Dembele, you're Kvara, you're Due, you're Barcola, you're whoever's in the attack, Gonzalo Ramos, King and Lee, man, Joe Fernandez even. Look at who's back here, bro. It's Tilo Kehrer, bro. I've seen this guy play for my club. This guy gave up the goal to Coman in the UCL final 5 years ago, 6 years ago. You know what I mean? This guy's barbecue chicken. This guy was dog water against Madrid. This guy's been very, very mid. You can get at him. You think Dembele's not going to press that and feel like it's barbecue chicken? You know what I'm saying? Due's looking at Caio Enrique like, yeah, bro, that should be barbecue chicken. You know what I mean? Kavar Barkalow should be looking at Caio Enrique and Vanderson and Wout Faze, who famously had two own goals, which is crazy. Like, to have one on goal is bad, but two on goals in the same game. You're looking at that, you're like, yeah, that should be barbecue chicken. You know what I mean? And yeah, there's some risk when we're pushing up, we're pressing up. A guy like Simon Adingra can get in behind really quickly. He's rapid, but man should be taking care of that. You know what I'm saying? Like this, it's not about the other team when it comes to us. It's about us beating ourselves, and it's always what it's gonna be. You know what I mean? This is simple. This is simple math. All right, guys. This is gonna come down to PSG beating PSG. It's gonna come down to PSG not having 4 xG and walking away with 1 goal. Okay, this is what it is really. All right, and that's what I think is gonna happen. I think when you talk about recent PSG news and Dembele and Vitinha coming out in the media saying, "Yeah, we got to play for the team. We got to play, put the club first, put the badge first, put PSG first, pass it to the player who's in a better position than you to score." All of these things, right? Combined with the team more, etc., etc. At the end of the day, statements like those can make rifts in great teams, right? Incredible teams. But this team right here has the potential to be one of the teams of the generation of our generation. Like this is one of the teams of the 21st century already. Right? You've won a sextuple, you automatically enter that conversation. It's as simple as that. I think those statements make this team stronger. They take that as fuel. They turn it around. That's the turning point. Last year the turning point I think was the trip to Qatar or Kuwait or wherever they hold the French Super Cup every year, right? And a lot of them got to bond, and it became like a family. The team became like a family. If you watch the documentary, a lot of the players can attest to that. They said that trip to Qatar was really, really formative in terms of increasing relationships and chemistry on the pitch and this feeling of togetherness and camaraderie within a team. I think this game again against Rennes the last Friday and this game against Monaco, knowing we're not performing to the level consistently that we should be at, I think that's the click. That's that's what gets everything going. That's the gear shift, whatever you want to call it, the last notch in the key, whatever. That's what it takes for this team to stop fooling around and get it together. And I think it starts tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. What is that, 9 p.m. in France or whatever? That's when it starts. All right. I have high expectations for tomorrow. I am looking at this team to go into Monaco and leave with a 2 goal lead. Okay. This Monaco team has been really bad. And yet, even not only have they been bad, they were bad and then they beat us in November, right? They beat us 1-0. And it was the same story, right? Not enough conversions of chances back then. But the alarm bells weren't ringing apparently. Now the alarm bells are ringing. Now we're like, okay, it's business end of the season. You know we gotta perform. This is go big or go home. All right, let's wrap up the tie here. Matter of fact, let's wrap up the tie. Let's put four. Let's put five to their face. If you can put five against Marseille, tell me you can't put five against Monaco, man. I don't want to hear it. All right. I'm not gonna predict 5-0, but I'm just saying that's the potential of this team. Okay, I'm gonna go with a 3-1 PSG here. We're gonna get it together. I'd like to keep a clean sheet, but I think maybe that's asking too much. Baby steps, but I think we're gonna start moving in the right direction from here. And yeah, give me PSG 3, Monaco 1. Go back to Paris with a 2 goal lead and close it out. That being said, man, I rambled far enough. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's been your boy, Ali Footy. Until next time. I don't even think I'm gonna edit this. I think I'm gonna just leave it as is. So if I made any mistakes, I'm sorry. But yeah, we'll just see. You'll just have to see. And you'll come to the end of this video and you'll be like, man, yeah, that guy didn't edit anything. If you made it this far, put that down in the comments. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. It's been your boy Ali Footy. Until next time. Adios.